Welcome to UrbanCast listeners. Today we're diving deep into a mystery. A listener requested this one, and it's pretty chilling. It's the Hinterkaifeck murders. Picture this: 1922 rural Bavaria, a family of 6, living on a secluded farmstead miles from anyone else. And then one night, tragedy strikes. The entire Gruber family is found brutally murdered.
Yeah, and what makes this case so perplexing is that the killer didn't just flee the scene. They stayed on the farm, living among the victims' bodies for days.
Okay, so let's start by setting the scene. Describing Hinterkaifeck, it wasn't exactly a bustling farmstead, right?
No, not at all. It was incredibly isolated, surrounded by dense forest. You have to imagine how vulnerable that made the family, especially back then. No phones or easy way to call for help. This isolation becomes a key factor in the mystery, because it means there were likely no witnesses to the crime itself, or to any of the strange events leading up to it.
And those events are what really make this case stand out, right? I mean, we've got unexplained footprints leading only towards the house, creepy noises in the attic but no one there, household items disappearing and reappearing. It's almost like someone was playing mind games with them.
Exactly. And it makes you wonder about the psychological impact on the family. Imagine the fear and the paranoia, feeling like you're being watched, knowing something is wrong but not being able to explain it.
Then there's Andreas Gruber, the head of the family. He wasn't exactly known for being the friendliest guy, was he?
No descriptions of Andreas paint him as a rather stern and harsh figure. It makes you think about family dynamics. Could his personality have contributed to their isolation? Did they have any secrets they were desperately trying to keep hidden?
It's almost like a horror movie unfolding, layer by layer. So we have this isolated family, a patriarch with a potentially difficult personality, and all these unsettling occurrences. Then comes the night of March 31st, 1922. What do we actually know about what happened?
We know that each family member was lured to the barn, one by one. The killer used a mattock, a brutal farming tool, similar to a pickaxe, to murder each of them.
It's a chilling thought, waiting in that barn, knowing your family had already been murdered, having no way to escape. What does the choice of weapon tell us?
The brutality suggests a deep level of rage, maybe even a personal vendetta. This wasn't just a quick, clean kill, it was personal. And the way they were killed, one by one, suggests the killer wanted them to suffer.
So the murders themselves were horrific, but what really sets Hinterkaifeck apart is what happened next, right?
You're referring to the killer's extended stay, of course. Instead of fleeing the scene, they lived on the farm for days amongst the bodies of their victims.
Okay, so help me understand this. The killer not only stays at the crime scene, but they feed the livestock, eat the food, even use the fireplace. Why? What could possibly be going on in their mind?
Well, it's a question that's puzzled investigators and psychologists for a century. There are a few possible explanations, but none are completely satisfying. Some suggest it points to a profound disconnect from reality, a sign of severe mental illness. It's like the killer couldn't grasp the enormity of their actions and just continued on as if nothing had changed.
So you're saying they weren't trying to cover up the crime or mislead investigators?
It doesn't seem like it. A more calculated killer would have likely disposed of the bodies, attempted to stage a different scene, or at least fled immediately to avoid detection. But this killer acted almost as if they belonged there, as if the murders were just a minor inconvenience in their daily routine.
It's a truly disturbing thought. Did the investigation at the time uncover any clues about who might have been capable of such a thing?
The investigation itself was quite extensive for 1922, especially considering this was rural Bavaria, with limited resources. But you have to remember that forensic science was still in its infancy back then.
Yeah, no CSI units swooping in with their high-tech gadgets. So what did investigators have to work with?
They had the crime scene, of course, but there were no signs of forced entry, no obvious struggle, and very few clues pointing to a specific suspect. They did find the murder weapon, the mattock, but that didn't lead them directly to the killer. Fingerprinting was a relatively new technique, and DNA analysis was unheard of.
So much of what we rely on today to solve crimes simply wasn't available. It makes you wonder if those limitations played a role in the case remaining unsolved.
Absolutely. Imagine trying to piece together such a complex and brutal crime without the tools we have today. It was like trying to solve a puzzle with half the pieces missing.
So who did the investigators focus on? Did they have any main suspects?
They explored several leads. There was Victoria's former lover, who she had been seen with shortly before the murders. There was also a neighbor who had a long-standing feud with Andreas Gruber, and even rumors of a disgruntled former farmhand. But none of these leads panned out.
Did they consider the possibility of a stranger, someone just passing through the area who saw an isolated farm as an easy target?
They did, but the killer's extended stay at the farm makes that less likely. It suggests a degree of familiarity with the family, the layout of the farm, even their daily routines.
Okay, that makes sense. So of all the theories that have been put forward over the years, are there any that stand out as particularly plausible?
Two theories have persisted over the decades. One involves Victoria's husband, Carl Gabriel. He was presumed dead during World War I, but some believe he might have faked his death, returned to Hinterkaifeck, and committed the murders out of jealousy or revenge.
And there was also a rumor about the youngest child, Joseph, and his parentage, right?
Yes, there were whispers in the village that Joseph was actually the product of an incestuous relationship between Victoria and her father, Andreas. While disturbing, this theory suggests a motive for someone wanting to eliminate the entire family.
But was there any real evidence to support either of these theories?
Unfortunately, no. Despite interviewing hundreds of people and pursuing every possible lead, the police were never able to definitively identify the killer or prove any of the theories conclusively.
It's hard to believe that a century later, we're still left with more questions than answers. It really speaks to the power of this case to capture the imagination. What is it about Hinterkaifeck that continues to fascinate people even after all this time?
I think it's the combination of factors that makes this case so compelling. You have the brutality of the murders, the isolation of the location, the strange events preceding the killings, and then the killer's utterly bizarre behavior afterward.
It really is like something straight out of a horror story. But with the added weight of knowing it actually happened, and the fact that it remains unsolved only adds to its mystique.
Exactly. It leaves us with a deep sense of unease, the thought that something so horrific could happen in such a seemingly peaceful place, and that the perpetrator could simply vanish into thin air. It forces us to confront the darkness that can lurk beneath the surface of everyday life.
It makes you wonder, if the Hinterkaifeck murders happened today, with all our advancements in forensic science, would we be able to solve it?
It's an interesting question. While modern technology would undoubtedly provide more clues than were available in 1922, there are still challenges. The lack of eyewitnesses and the passage of time complicate things.
So would DNA evidence be enough to crack the case wide open? Or would Hinterkaifeck remain a chilling reminder of the limits of even our most sophisticated investigative tools?
Yeah, it really gets to the heart of what draws us to these unsolved mysteries, doesn't it? That desire to find answers, to make sense of the senseless. But sometimes those answers just remain elusive, and we're left to grapple with the unknown.
And that's part of what makes Hinterkaifeck so compelling, I think. It challenges us to think critically, weigh the evidence, consider different perspectives. Even if we can't definitively solve it, the exploration can be intellectually stimulating.
You know, it's interesting to think about the impact this case has had, not just on those directly involved, but on the wider cultural landscape. A century later, people are still talking about Hinterkaifeck, writing books, making documentaries. It's almost become like a modern-day folklore tale. Yeah, it speaks to our fascination with the dark side of human nature. These kinds of stories tap into those primal fears about vulnerability, isolation, that potential for violence lurking just beneath the surface of ordinary life. And the fact that it happened in such a seemingly idyllic setting, a remote farmstead, only adds to that sense of unease.
It's a reminder that evil doesn't discriminate, right? It can touch any place, anytime, and shatter the illusion of safety we often create for ourselves.
And that lack of resolution, that lingering question of who and why, allows our imaginations to run wild. We fill in the gaps with our own theories, our own interpretations of the evidence, which in a way keeps the story alive.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the Hinterkaifeck murders, I want to pose a question to you, the listener. Imagine for a moment that you're an investigator back in 1922, arriving at that chilling scene. What would you have done differently? What details would you have focused on? Would you have been able to piece together the puzzle that has eluded so many for so long?
Maybe there was a clue overlooked, a witness not fully questioned, a piece of evidence misinterpreted. Or maybe some mysteries are just destined to remain unsolved, forever haunting us with their unanswered questions.
It's a chilling thought, but one that really underscores the enduring power of Hinterkaifeck. It reminds us that even in our age of advanced technology and scientific breakthroughs, some secrets remain stubbornly hidden, challenging our understanding of the world and our place in it.
It's a case that stays with you. It forces you to confront those darker aspects of human nature and the fragility of life. And it leaves you wondering what other secrets might be lurking out there, waiting to be discovered, or perhaps better left buried.
Well, that's all the time we have for today's deep dive. A huge thank you to our listener for suggesting this truly fascinating and haunting case. If you're as captivated by the Hinterkaifeck murders as we are, we encourage you to do some digging of your own. There's a wealth of information out there, books, articles, documentaries, each offering a different perspective on this enduring mystery.
And who knows, maybe someday someone will uncover that missing piece of the puzzle, finally bringing closure to this century-old cold case. But until then, the mystery of Hinterkaifeck lives on, a testament to the enduring power of the unknown.
Thanks for joining us on this journey into the heart of darkness. Until next time, stay curious and keep exploring the hidden corners of history.